Hey, what's up everyone? Let's talk about how we keep each other safe while rolling. Everybody wants to be excellent in this activity, and that takes a long time. So our long-term goals have to take priority, which means injury is the real enemy, and we have to treat rolling as one long session. Now, Jiu-Jitsu is always going to carry certain risks, but as long as we adhere to some really good best practices, we can make this activity really, really safe for ourselves and for our training partners and get to where we want to go. So in order to do that, we're going to talk about 3 areas of responsibility, one that applies to everybody, one that applies particularly to the lower belts, and one that applies particularly to the upper belts. So let's get started. Now, none of what I'm going to tell you means don't go hard. The reality is, part of what makes Jiu-Jitsu effective is that it is alive, that we are consistently training with resisting opponents. And so training hard is an important process to get where we need to be. But most of the injuries that I see don't occur from any kind of malice or even carelessness. It's inexperienced folks that are in situations that are unfamiliar with, that maybe try to bust out of those situations using strength and dynamic movement. And so that is what we really want to avoid. The more experience you get, the more knowledgeable you're going to be about where you're safe and where you're not. And so that's going to help you keep yourself and your training partners uninjured going forward. So let's talk about things that apply to everybody. The first rule to apply to everybody is watch your space and be aware of your surroundings. We always talk about the law of Jiu-Jitsu attraction, where no matter how big the mats are, no matter how few people are on them, people are going to run into each other. Now, some gyms say that it's the lower belt's responsibility to move for the upper belts. I don't put too much stock in that. I think it's everybody's responsibility to keep their head on a swivel. And if you see people that are about to collide, or if you're about to collide with somebody, make sure you're not crashing into other people. Bodies moving in space are going to be dangerous. And so being aware of your surroundings is important. The second thing that applies to everybody is to tap early. A tap is not a signal of defeat. A tap is not a signal that you're giving up. A tap is a signal to your opponent that their technique has worked, or it can also be a signal that you're in danger for whatever reason. Maybe your toe is caught in their gi. Maybe you slipped and fell the wrong way and you need your opponent to not continue to move forward for a result of injury. The tap is a sacred thing, and so people will respect it. And so rather than test the limits of our flexibility or strength, it's always best practices to tap early and to keep training. The last thing I'll say about best practices for tapping is please tap on your partner's body and say tap. You can also verbally tap if your hands are caught and things like that. Those are best practices because it ensures that your partner is going to know that you tapped, and it's not just somebody tapping on the mat somewhere over there that could be somebody stomping on the mat. They know that they know that you need to stop, and so they're going to keep you safe. So tap early and verbally tap. These are, I think, some helpful guidelines for newer people, or for everybody really. These rules apply to everybody, but particularly for newer people. Focus on doing technical movements. We make everybody take intro to BJJ for some very specific reasons, and one of those is we want you to know at least one technical move from all the common grappling positions before you start sparring. Because like I said, most of the injuries that I see are people using explosive movement in situations where they aren't safe. And so not only should you be trying to focus on technique, you should not be trying to muscle out of positions, and specifically not submissions. Because if you don't know exactly where you're going and you go there hard and fast, it stands a pretty good chance of not ending well for you. So focus on the technical movements. I would way rather have you get a bad result like having to tap by doing a good process in your early years of jiu-jitsu than by getting a good result, like maybe you threw a smaller person off you. But in the long run, that's going to not lead to good results because that's not going to work on more experienced people, on people that are your own size, and things of that nature. So tap early, tap often, focus on the technical movements, don't put too much stock in any short-term results, and focus on learning. So these are some important things for newer people to keep in mind. Now, more experienced people, all the stuff that applies to everyone and applies to the newer people generally applies to the higher belts too. But the higher belts have more responsibility simply because we have more experience, we have more knowledge. And so newer folks, when you see higher belts going hard with each other, like really trying to get after it, know that they are doing so safely because those folks know where the dynamic movements are going to take them. So the more experience you have, the more you can do stuff like that in a safe fashion. So upper belts have a responsibility to take care of lower belts, which doesn't just mean considering the lower belt's base of knowledge, but also considering like where the lower belt may be unsafe. So a couple of principles to keep in mind. Upper belts, when you consider your partner's skill set, we're not just talking about considering things that are legal at their belt level, like lower belts can't do heel hooks or calf slicers or things like that. We're not just considering that. We're considering the way that people, the technical movements that people may know or may not know to receive the moves you're doing to them. So for example, a move like an overhead sweep. Everybody in this academy, after they get out of intro, should know how to break fall. They should know how to do forward rolls, but it never hurts to check in with your buddy to see how they feel with that. I will literally sometimes, if I'm about to overhead sweep someone, check with them and say like, hey, how do you feel about your forward rolls? And if they don't feel great about them, then I will choose a different sweep to do. Obviously, in the long run, we all have to get on the same page, but part of laddering up and sort of building this pyramid that we're building is making sure people know the techniques to keep themselves safe, and checking in with them before the injury occurs is critical. Now, all of this is irrespective of body type or strength or size or things like that, but we should consider those things too. And this is important for everybody, not just because of safety for your partner, but because of your own growth as a practitioner of jiu-jitsu. If you're a 200-pound strong person, it doesn't do you any good to hold a 110-pound person in side control for 5 minutes. And even though you may be able to do that, the point is, like, you could work on your technique in another way and use things that are not attributes. In the long run, we all want to build our attributes. Everybody wants to build flexibility, strength, cardio, and that sort of stuff. But it's also important to recognize in the training room, when we're all working together to get better, that it's not useful for people to just use their physical skills to dominate others. And when we get to the same level and we're all black belts together, then okay, we can all go hard at each other. Anyway, these are just some general rules, some thoughts for how we keep ourselves safe in the academy. I hope this is helpful for you. And remember, when we all get better, we all get better. And so keeping everybody on the same journey is really important.